Let's get into today's episode of Why We Succeed. What is going on? Welcome to a new episode of Why We Succeed. I'm Immanuel, and I'm joined by a very special guest today, none other than my girl, Sara. What's up, Sara?
Hi, everyone. How's it going?
Oh, man, Sara, I am so excited to have you on the podcast today. Like, you are doing such amazing work. When I came across your YouTube channel, I was just blown away because there's a lot of people out there who have huge channels and, you know, they're promoting all of the great things that they're doing. But it's people like yourself who your channel hasn't blown up, but I promise you, like, like the content, the value that you deliver is like amazing.
Thank you.
Yes.
You.
So thank you for being on YouTube, taking the time to share your journey. And I'm looking forward to learning a lot about what you've done to get to the point that you're at today.
Absolutely.
But as all of our viewers know, they saw the title. You had the opportunity to not only start your agency, but get 40 clients in the first 3 months, hit 6 figures in just your second year of business. How did that feel?
Well, I'm exhausted.
That is real.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Y'all will learn this about me as this conversation goes on, but I'm very much a glass is half empty kind of person, but I'm also a realist, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and, tell y'all that I have some magic secret and buy into, what I do, because it's been 2 years that I've been full-time in my business as of yesterday, and that we're recording this.
Wow.
And I was looking back yesterday just on kind of the progress I've made and the things that I've done. And I couldn't tell you how I did it other than putting my head down and working really hard. And so it's been really interesting to be like, holy, like, wow, those are my accomplishments. It's also like, how can we sustain that so we can, maintain that, but not be so tired all the time?
Right.
Yeah, I'm really tired, but I'm really proud. I'm really proud.
Yeah. That is amazing. And, a lot of people don't ever get to that point, right? There's a lot of people who they can go a whole year and barely even get 10 clients or 12, even one a month, right? And to be able to get 40 in just 3 months of working, I know that didn't just happen by osmosis. And I just want you to convey that to everybody listening. Like, oh, she didn't just wake up like this and one morning 40 clients were just banging down on your door like, yes, sir, we want to work with you.
Not at all. No, it was actually the complete opposite. For me, do we want to kind of get into my backstory now? Because I feel like it all kind of intertangles.
Let's do it.
So for those of you who don't know my story, I come from the nonprofit world. So I did AmeriCorps at 18 years old, packed up my car, moved cross country, little Sara, driving a little Ford Escort down I-35.
Wow.
And, and I never really saw myself in the nonprofit space. For me, I was like, oh, you don't get paid and you're overworked, but you're doing good work for the community, right? Like I really did not understand this industry at all. And so for me, I grew up in a pretty environment. My dad went to federal prison when I was 17.
Wow.
And there was no college fund for me. And that was when a family friend had recommended that I do AmeriCorps, because not only do you get paid and you can kind of move wherever you want, but you also get an education award. So I did 2 years of AmeriCorps, which equated to my first 2 years of undergrad. It was completely paid for me because I did the community college route, right? So within that, I really learned about people who were like me and had trauma and had a very similar story that I realized that, like, in a weird way, these were my people, right? So I grew up in a really white environment. I went to high school. I have a very white family. Growing up, there was like one black kid at my school, and he was part Asian. And so I was never taught about color. I was never taught about poverty. I was never talked to about indifferences. Like, yes, you hear about civil rights and Rosa Parks and MLK, but my family did not have a color conversation.
Right.
And I'm really vocal about this because I think that's where your education starts, is to realize what you don't know. And so I say, as poor as I was doing AmeriCorps, that it honestly opened my eyes to the world in a way that I would have never seen other than that, right? And it really
Wow.
started a love and a passion for doing impact work. And so
Mm.
that 2 years, I taught science in K through 5. So I taught
Okay.
robotics. I taught, we sent ping pong balls to space, and I taught
Wow.
amusement park physics. And it was the coolest 2 years of my life. And in that time, I realized I didn't want to do anything else. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what it looked like. I was on the historian track. I wanted to work for the Smithsonian, but
Oh, wow.
I didn't know how I could give back and also heal myself, right?
Right,
So
right.
for me, I'm really vocal about the fact that I'm 1 in 28 kids in America who have a parent incarcerated before they're 18. And the
Wow.
trauma that brings you throughout the remainder of your life, no matter what that stint in prison looks like, the
Right.
secondhand trauma from that is incredibly impactful in somebody's life. It can be negative or positive.
Right.
And so within that, I started surrounding myself with kids and adults who had either been incarcerated, and I started asking questions and learning and seeing how people were navigating their trauma. Where
Right.
for me, when my dad went to prison, it was like another Tuesday. Never sent to therapy, wasn't talked about it. My family was very much, we need to create this image publicly,
Right.
and no one can know our problems, right?
Right.
And so I didn't start dealing with my trauma until I met a few gentlemen who actually, let me backtrack. So after I left AmeriCorps, I went on to a nonprofit that did adult workforce education, and we focused on reentry and homelessness, training in the skilled trades. So I was doing marketing, business development, all of those things. And it really wasn't until, I was probably 21 or 22 at the time, and I had met 3 gentlemen taking one of our HVAC programs who actually had been incarcerated together, got released around the same time, and ultimately came to this nonprofit and now work at National Instruments running their entire facility.
Wow.
And I remember sitting with them and just asking questions and being a human and being a little vulnerable. And that really started my healing process so I could do more and do better, right?
Right.
So that's kind of my backstory. And through all of that, I realized that you can help others and be impactful without it being so direct, right? Without it being a grant written or a specific program offered. Just being able to have a conversation with somebody and opening up that space for learning or inclusion or just to make someone feel important and that their ideas and their mission and their kind of path forward matters. That's really what my bottom line and my values are back then, and more so obviously today.
Right.
So through all of that, when I started getting into this, I don't know, groove, I guess you want to say, I really was like, I'm doing this and that's all I'm doing and no one's going to stop me.
Yes.
I started recognizing that my skills, of web design and marketing and storytelling and video work and all of these things were kind of missing in the other nonprofits that were our partners. And so I didn't really care. I should also say at this point, my previous boss is actually my best friend now. She also owns her own business at this point. But I would go into L'Oreal's office and be like, I hope you fire me today. I don't want to be here. I really hate, because I was getting really bullied from a senior director. And I was asking for professional development and I was asking for other opportunities and was consistently being told no. And so I sat down one day and L'Oreal had basically challenged me to write down all of my skills. And I tell everyone to do this still today. I don't care if you're a freelancer, you're still in a 9-to-5, you need to do this annually. And so she had me sit down because I couldn't find a new job. I was like, I don't know what I'm even looking for. And so she said, write down all of your skills and then I want you to break them up. What do you want to do? What do you want to get better at? And what don't you want to do? And you can craft your own role based on that, right? And so I started seeing all of these kind of communication skills, right? The video, marketing, the social graphics, all of those. And then I started realizing all of our partner nonprofits didn't have a Sara. They didn't have a Sara Loretta on their team who could tell stories and help them get money for their programming.
Right.
And that's ultimately how I landed the 40 clients is I took that skill list and I did everything on it. Literally,
Wow.
I did video, I did social, I wrote some grants, I did whole like events that I helped run, like at the library. I said yes to every single thing because I knew that there was a gap and it needed to be filled. And I basically sold myself to these other nonprofits and was like, look, hire me as a contractor. Here's what I can do for you. And one of my favorite things that I ever did was I was a contractor for the electrical union here in Austin, IEC. And they would hire me for video, and every year they do a barbecue cook-off. It's a very Texas thing. For those of you who aren't from Texas, barbecue is the thing, right?
Right.
And so for 3 straight days, I went to this ranch and filmed a barbecue competition and filmed these, burly dudes who are electricians just making food and hanging out with their families. And that was like the coolest thing I think I've ever done. I mean, obviously I've done other things, but that was really cool to be able to capture stories that older white men who are running the electrical union couldn't see. Right. And that's, I think, really where my skill set has allowed me to thrive is I can see between the gaps. I can read between the lines and be able to tell people what they're afraid to say out loud to validate who they are and where they're going. So that's ultimately how I did it. And then that kickstarted, I think, like the first 5 clients maybe I did that for. And then it was a trickle effect because I was always on my game, always on time or early. I was in marching band growing up, and my band director was always like, if you're 5 minutes early, you're already 10 minutes late. So I'm always showing up, staying late and helping clean up, asking questions, just being of service. And that was something I think AmeriCorps really instilled in me, is always be of service, and you can go so far. So yeah, that's how I got 40 clients. And I think within that, I really set a good foundation for where my brand is at now. I'm 100% referral. I don't market. I don't sit on Instagram and go, hey guys, I'm booking for September. Like, that makes me feel so disgusting. And I think it's all about how you treat people. That's how people come back to you. That's why people share your name and they're proud to tag you in the work you created online or whatever you did for them, because you're crafting a truly unique, personal, human experience.
That's real. Wow. Sara, there's so much there that you shared that I want to get into. And I want to first start with that transition that you made. You mentioned your upbringing, and you mentioned how when you went to AmeriCorps, it pretty much, is it fair to say it was almost kind of like a culture shock to a certain extent?
Oh, yeah. So going to Catholic school, in Cleveland, growing up in Cleveland, you either go to Catholic school or you go to public school. Like, it's very half and half of the kids. And so it was normal to go to Catholic school and go to church on Sundays and wear your brown plaid uniform. But I never knew that, like, my dad and my stepmom, like, didn't have money, right? Like, I talked about this in a recent YouTube video of, like, we never ate out, but yet I went to private school. Like, I never was taught about money or any of those things. And so when I came to AmeriCorps, and I taught in South Austin, Austin ISD, and the 2 schools that I taught at were 100% free and reduced lunch, which meant every single family at that school fell under the 200% poverty line. Wow. And I didn't understand it either, where I would see kids who had brand new shoes or had iPhones, but they were getting free and reduced lunch, so it was really a culture shock for me, but I would also say a learning moment, because I learned about how people handle money, right? And you want to look like you have money, but maybe you don't, right? And what kind of those public perceptions are. But I also learned that those were the kids that cared, and they loved hard, and they just wanted to be loved back. And I had some of the best times teaching, but I also, I'll tell you a quick story too. Yeah. My first year teaching, so I taught after school. So every day I had a different grade, and I taught Monday through Thursday. Okay. And my first year, I taught 5th grade at kind of, I don't want to say the most violent elementary school, but the most gang-ridden middle school was across the street.
Wow.
And I will never forget, I had my 5th grade class was 18 boys and 3 girls, and we were doing robotics for like Lego Mindstorm kits. If you guys are into Legos, you can buy like this robotics kit, and it's all like click and drag coding on your computer. And we were outside on the playground, and a gang came over and tried to recruit my kids. And I was 18 at the time. I was like, I didn't know this was a real thing. Like, right. That day, like, because I didn't know. You know, I had no clue about the realities of inner city life. You know, and that was, I think, kind of an eye-opener for me, because I went on to undergrad, and my focus, my specialty was middle-class history and innovation. And so I spent my entire 4 years studying inner city development and innovation within the working class. And it's so interesting to really know just how much need is out there, and how unaware so many people are. So, but I will get off that horse, and we can talk about other things. Because I can go on and on and on and on and on. So
I appreciate you sharing that, because that's something that people often don't touch on, is some of those culture shocks that we experience in our life, and they impact our journey. And this is my own assumption that I'm making, so definitely let me know if I'm wrong, but it sounds like these experiences that you had, these culture shocks that you had, they're still reverberating today in the work that you do, the people that you are working with, and ultimately the causes that you're trying to champion. Would that be an accurate assessment?
Absolutely. I think even more so today with just everything that's been happening in the last 2 years. I'm not even talking about COVID. You know, I'm talking about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and there's a couple kids that were killed from police brutality that were Hispanic here in Austin at the beginning of COVID. And, you know, I think about all of those people, and I think about just I hate being white. Like, I'm just going to say it. I know that sounds ridiculous, but like, I am doing my part and trying every day to be a better person, regardless of the fact that I am white, right? Because I can't help my skin color, but what I can help is help my friends and my allies move up and have the same experiences or better that I have, right? And so it makes me uncomfortable sometimes, because I feel like it's a privilege to be able to help who I want or work with who I want. But I literally learned so much from every single client, from every single friend. I mean, my old boss, L'Oreal, that I mentioned, like I said, she's my best friend now. And she is the most beautiful Black woman I've ever met in my life. And I will never forget, one day I went into her office, because she loves wearing box braids, but they're really heavy. And she wears really long box braids. And, you know, I remember going into her office one day and going, how do you wash your hair? Like, how do you handle, like, how long does it take for you to get your hair done? Because as a white person, I don't wash my hair every day. I don't even brush it. You know, I don't know what those things look like. And so for me, I make every single relationship a learning experience. You know, and that's all that I can do. And I can pass that on to other people and help change that conversation. And, you know, I'll say too, I really don't work with white people. That's, you know, we want to talk about niching down. It's very rare that I work with people who are white. And the people that I do work with that are white are usually a part of the LGBTQ community, you know, in the trans community, because those people are just as a minority as people of color. And so one of my worst client experiences was like a 65-year-old white woman. And at that point I was like, I'd never doing this one again. You know, it sucks. But I think when you find your tribe and you find your people, that's all that matters, you know?
Yeah, it is. And this is the one thing that I would say, speaking as a Black man to you as a white woman, is that you're in the skin that you're in for a reason, right? Because the role that you're playing, not just as a businesswoman, right? Not just as somebody who's helping people who are in need or helping nonprofit organizations, but as an individual. It's your transparency, it's your honesty, it's your willingness to look at yourself and say, how can I add value to other people? That's what it's really about, right? And even if I turn the attention onto myself as a Black man or Black people in general, it's the same for us. We have to first start at that individual level and say, hey, what value can I add to other people? What value can I add to the world? And then doing what you can, going back to what you had mentioned, utilizing your skill sets to do that. And as you mentioned, it may not necessarily be the fact that you choose, I guess we could say, intentionally to say, hey, I don't want to work with white people, or vice versa. If we're talking about a Black business owner, them saying, hey, I don't want to work with Black people. It's just the fact that, hey, if you operate in a certain space and there's a certain group of people that you've been called to serve, that's all it is. And the value that you're adding will definitely be recognized. And I just love your transparency and your just willingness to share your journey, your feelings, your thoughts, and do so unapologetically. I feel like that's something that we often don't see. So many people try to bite their tongue. So many people try to say what's politically correct. And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, this is the square that I'm standing on. This is the reason why I'm doing it. And you may not agree with it. You may not understand it, but it's not going to change what I'm doing. And I appreciate that about you, Sarah. I really do.
Well, and I think that there's also someone once told me who was a man of color is it's not my job to educate white people. And that has really stuck with me for a long time. And that's, I think, why I try so hard to ask the questions that I do and go out of my way to ask something. It's going to make me uncomfortable, right? Like if y'all have ever watched, if you haven't, you need to. But Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man is an incredible YouTube series. And that's, I think, where a lot of people need to start is stop feeling uncomfortable, because you're going to feel it regardless, and do the work that you have to do, because it's not your job, Jay, to educate me. It's my job to do better and to educate myself and to ask those questions. And so that's what I try to do. And it's always interesting when I do work with someone who isn't someone of color or a minority. One of my strategic questions in my sessions are, how are you going to create diversity and inclusion in your brand? And I worked with somebody recently who I think it caught them off guard, right? But they were like, oh, I guess like imagery could have people of color. And I was like, no, that's not it. Back to the drawing board. That is not what we're doing here, you know?
What I love about what you're saying is the fact that you have a very specific mission. You have a very specific, how can I put this? Like there's a certain group of people that you want to align with. Not because there's anything wrong with them or what they're doing, but because the work that you're doing matters so much to you. You know, we hear so much about people saying, do what you love, do what you're passionate about. But it's totally different when you take the approach that you're taking, where it's like, I will turn down clients if it will compromise my love or my passion or my ability to stay with the mission that I've set from the onset. And that is powerful. You know, it really isn't about race or color or any of those things as much as it is about, this is the mission. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. And it just happens to serve this group of people more so than it serves this other group of people. And as a result, I got to stay on course, stick with this mission.
I'll tell you what, and some people probably listening, y'all are probably like, oh, I'm sure she does that. No, like legit, I onboarded a client maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and in our strategy session, this girl paid in full, okay? Paid in full, and during the strategy session, she said, I only want to work with basically rich white women because I want high invoices. I don't want to work with same-sex couples. I ended the conversation right there, and I said, I have to give you a refund because this goes against my values. And y'all, it was a $9,000 invoice, and I gave it away because I don't care. The money, I don't give a shit about the money. You have to walk the walk that you're talking, you know, and you've got to actually do what you say you're going to do. And that's That's the integrity that I think people a lot of times overlook when they're starting their business is, I'm sure when y'all heard that I landed 40 clients and I said yes to everything, I still had my values behind that, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when people are starting businesses, they're like, gotta get the money, I've got to get a client. I quit my job. What am I going to do if I don't get a client? And they overlook those red flags. And then within their first year, they're so resentful of their business because they're not taking the time to focus on the ethos and pathos to help them move forward, right?
That's
And so it's really important for anybody listening that you take an hour this week and you do this. If you don't know what your values are, and I'm not talking about like your niche values, I'm literally sitting here going, what will you say no to? Is it someone who's a Trump supporter? Is it someone who doesn't support same sex? If you don't want those to be your values and you're fine supporting those people, that's fine. But you need to make it clear so you don't give people the wrong impression. My values are literally listed on my website. You can read through them. It's called, if you go onto my homepage, there's a link called Culture Manual. Read it. And that's, I definitely challenge anyone listening, like to really think about, when you close your eyes at the end of the day, how do you want people to remember you? What do you want that respect and that integrity to look like?
Right. Oh man, I love what you're saying, Sarah. And this is
I'm such a teacher, right?
Yeah, see, like this is what Why We Succeed is all about, because your why is screaming at us right now. I mean, like, if this was in the movies, we had a bright light shining like with the engine sound, because like it's right there, and it's your values. It's the mission that you have set out to fulfill and accomplish in this world. And I think that that's absolutely amazing. It's like, you have the metrics, you have the numbers, you have all of those things. But as you mentioned, that's not the focus. That's not the ultimate goal. That's not the target that you're aiming at. And there's two things that I learned that I think go right in line with what you mentioned. When it comes to doing business, the first thing I had to learn, it was a very valuable lesson, which is how freeing it is when you can finally get to a place where you can say no to potential clients. Like when I learned that lesson, it freed me up to be able to say, you know what? I only want to work with certain people. And that's the second thing.
I think though you have to always be in that no place. I don't think that and that's, I think, a misconception about freelancing and entrepreneurship is like, there's some kind of like gate that you get to, and when it opens, you can do that, but you need to be on that no game the whole time. And I think that that's something that I failed at, right? I mean, I definitely had bad clients. I still sometimes get bad clients, but you have to know what your end game is and what your bottom line is in order to feel confident in saying no, right? And there's always work, y'all. There's always work, right? And I would be the first person to tell y'all, the Christmas before COVID hit, I drove Uber for a month because I didn't have clients. Did I sit here and cry on social media and beg people to pay me? No, I did what I had to do. And I think a lot of people don't have the guts to do that, and that's okay. But y'all have to find what your guts are and what your backbone looks like,
Right. Vitally important. And it's so interesting because it goes in tandem with what you were mentioning earlier, which is you do need to say yes. And I agree with you that you need to say yes often. Yes. However, before you get to that point, the foundation is knowing what you have to say no to. Because if you don't know what you got to say no to, then the things you're going to say yes to, you shouldn't be saying yes to.
Yep.
See, that's the thing. You say yes to the right stuff, not to everything. And that's the mistake that I think a lot of people make is they think, oh, well, I just got to go out and get any client, every client, whoever's willing to pay me, whatever morals or compromises I have to make. And it's like, nah, that's not the way to do it. Or I'll put it like this, not if you are a person who has morals and values and standards that you hold yourself to. Right. I mean, because we know that there's some people that don't, or those standards or those morals are just depraved and low.
But I think it goes back. I think it goes back to that skill set list that I talked about. Right. So if you have a list of no's, like perfect example, I hate with every fiber of my being creating social media graphics without offering a social media strategy. Like, why am I going to sit here and make graphics just to make graphics? Right.
Right.
And so for or I guess it was last Christmas. I was kind of bored and I was like, I need something to do. And I was again looking at that skill list of those no's, right? Like I don't offer social graphics as collateral in a design project unless someone pays me for a brand campaign. I just don't do it. And so I was sitting with that and I go, am I really bad at them? Or do I really I can be paid for other things, right? And so I took that as a design challenge over winter break, or I guess it was technically Thanksgiving break. And I did a quick little setup. I did a little challenge. And I was like, I wonder how much money I could make by offering a quick little Fiverr deal, right? I've never designed on Fiverr, never had a Fiverr profile, but I kept seeing these videos of people doing Fiverr challenges. And so I kind of combined the two and I said, I wonder how much money and clients that I can make by just offering quick social media graphics for holiday sales. Right. Do y'all know 2 of those clients that paid me $25? I think they got like 5 or 6 graphics from me. They bought it 4 times. This one specific client bought the graphics 4 different times and then paid me an $8,000 invoice after to do a brand campaign. And I just took the skill set that I was like, oh, no, and turned it into something of a learning experience of like, am I really bad at this? Do I really hate it? Or do I need to reframe it? And I think a lot of people, that's that bottom line is people are like, I don't want to work with men. I don't understand why, because they're so hands off. They don't give a shit about what you do. They just want it done. All these designers who are like, I'm only working with freelancing women. Is it really because you hate men, or do you need to reframe who you work with, right? And what are those boundaries around who you work with? Is it an age thing? Is it the industry, right? Yeah. Because I think a lot of people associate men with corporate and they're terrible and they're Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates or whatever, right? And that's just like not the case, right? Like there's really dope dudes. Like I worked with this guy literally down the street who owns a cattle company and he raises meat and then makes like sellable meat boxes. He's my meat supplier now. And I did his website just because I emailed him. And so and that's really what it is reframing your own personal conversation to determine what those no's are and what those learning curves are. Because if you're not learning, what's the point? You know? Right.
I agree with you. Yeah. And kind of going back, like I was sharing, there were 2 lessons that had stood out along my journey. And in addition to learning what to say no to, the other thing was being a man of faith, praying for just the right clients, the right projects, and at the right time. And that's something that has been vitally important for me, because when the wrong clients come, and I'll be honest with you, I even pray that the wrong clients are repelled. I want them to be repelled by me when they see me, when they see my services, to want to run in the opposite direction and be like, nah, I don't want to work with him. And that's totally fine, because what does that do? That cuts through the time that you, me, and other people who stand on our square, the time that we have to try to sift through these people. When you make, like you said, right on your website, you put your values. People can go read through it and determine whether or not they align. If they don't, hey, you know what? Go somewhere else. If you do, let's work together. And guess what? I'm sure it's going to be magic. It's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be impactful, right?
It's funny you say that, though, about repelling bad clients, because every 6 months, I kind of hope I get one, because it helps you fix your processes and tighten any loose screws that you didn't know were loose until you get that bad client, right? And I think it's a lot too, what we think is a bad client, it's such a broad statement because people are outsourcing for a reason, right? They're not perfect. They're not an expert in what they're hiring you for, and they've recognized that that's their problem and they need a solution. And so one thing that I love doing is opening up the conversation in strategy sessions to be imperfect and let me see what those red flags are. Let me see what's going wrong in your business ecosystem, so you can be a better leader, so you can be a CEO, and you can have someone who's unbiased and not really inside your business tell you how to do better. And I tell everyone in these calls, I'm like, I'm not going to make you feel good. I'm probably going to hurt your feelings. But if you make more money because of me and your business lasts longer because of me, then what does it matter? you know?
Right.
And so I like getting the problem clients every now and again. It depends on my workload, right?
Yeah.
But
Right.
again, no one's perfect. And
Right.
so I think that's, again, like reframing what is a red flag or a bad client really mean to you? And that's honestly, that's why I stick to those values. If someone doesn't email me the right way, am I really going to like say no to their invoice? No, I'm going to reshape it and bring back up our contract of what the communication boundaries are, or, you know, whatever. And I think you have to have patience for that too. And a lot of people just don't, and that's okay. Right. Yeah. But I'm on this mission to make everyone better, and, you know, and if that's the horse I die on, then that's fine.
I can respect that. You stand on your square. That's very few people do.
My square.
Yeah, very few people do, man. You know, a lot of people, they teeter, they totter, they lean. And I think flexibility and compromise is necessary in certain situations. But when it comes to, I would say, our values, our standards as individuals, right? Not necessarily speaking for the general public, and definitely not everybody on the planet. But when we look at ourselves as individuals, I think we have to stand for something. Otherwise, like how are you making it through life? You just go where the wind blows.
Totally. Yeah. And that's what I mean is I think a lot of people are afraid to stand up for themselves. And
why do you think that is, sir?
I think it's because our society doesn't teach you to stand tall and stand proud, and you know, when the negative is there, right? You know, and I'm not going to say I'm like the perfect human, you know, but I think that, you know, I've done EMDR therapy for many, many years. And if y'all
what is that? Because I'm not familiar.
Yeah. So EMDR is, okay, how do I explain this? So regular therapy, people know it as like Mad Men. You're laying on a couch, smoking a cigarette, you got problems, right?
Right.
EMDR is more about your nervous system and how your brain remembers trauma. And how your body remembers it, not how your memory remembers it, right? And so really being in touch with your body and what makes you uncomfortable. It's kind of, you do a lot of breath work. It's, I don't want to call it hypnosis because it's not, but you do a lot of like internal reflection and things like that. And I've really learned of what my walls are, what my boundaries are, what makes me feel uncomfortable, what doesn't make me confident. You know, for instance, I'll give y'all an example because if you haven't realized yet, I'm a very transparent person.
I love that about you.
There are no secrets in my life. But I had a client earlier this year who was the same older 60-plus woman who had never been an executive director before, was starting this organization. She was an art teacher for a long time and was starting to like really just put everything more formally together. And I had done their website. And basically PayPal had crashed. And people who were paying for their membership with this organization were accidentally getting charged twice because PayPal's developer, whatever, there was a crash on their back end. Wasn't something I did. She was replying to her members, publicly blaming me that I did not set her website up. And then she was forwarding me the emails of her response. And after about, I think I got maybe 6.5 hour period because she was like copying and pasting the responses. And I emailed her and I said, I don't appreciate this. I've told you now 2 times. This is not my issue. I have tried to call PayPal for you. I cannot speak to them. I'm not an authorized user on your account. You need to call them. You need to stop blaming me. And I put my foot down. I said, look, you don't owe me any more money. Our contract's done. I've delivered what I promised. Do not contact me again. And it's that simple. I'm very quick to cut people out if I am not getting the fulfillment that I need from it. And I don't lose sleep over that. If you're not vocal about how people are treating you, it's going to just dig this hole for you that you're never going to be able to get out of. And you're going to start carrying issues forward that you're going to be like, well, I don't know why so-and-so's doing this, or I don't know why X, Y, Z. When really it's because of an issue that you never actually resolved internally. And so that's something for my entire life, my entire childhood. No one gave about my feelings. No one ever talked to me. My grandmother to this day is like, no one talked to you as a child. And I go, I know, but they're going to talk to me now. And I don't care if it makes them uncomfortable, you know, and that's just how I live my life. You know, I think that in order to do better, you have to be uncomfortable. And I at least do it in a respectful way. I don't call people names. I don't yell at them. But I'm very like, put my foot down and it is what it is. So, I don't know. I sound like such a don't I?
Not to me. I mean, I know some people will definitely try to give you that label, but I think it definitely wouldn't be deserved. I think that there are people of character who know how they live life, how they define the road that they want to walk. And to me, that's what you are. You're a person that has defined the road, the path that you want to walk. You've developed your morals, your values, and the standards that you hold yourself to, and the standards that you expect other people to be held to if they are going to be allowed in your space. That's what boundaries is all about, right? We all need boundaries. Otherwise, people will violate left and right. So
boundaries.
I mean, you speaking to the choir. I mean, if somebody disagrees, I mean, by all means, that's on them. But I totally understand what you're saying.
DM me if you disagree. We can talk about it.
Right. Drop a comment, do whatever you need to do. And we can definitely talk about it in a respectful manner, right? There's no disrespect here at all. It's just, hey, what's your, why do you view it differently? But from my perspective, Sarah, I rock with you. I think that I approach it the same way. I have a set of morals and values and things that I stand on. I highly value character. And I think that it teaches us a lot, not just about a person, but in regards to what we're talking about, even in business. I don't want to do business with people that don't have character.
Yep.
Right? I don't. Well, I know some people do.
I don't even want to do business with people who aren't willing to further develop their character.
Right. You know Say that again. Yo, that was a golden nugget right there.
Like, who you were at 18 is not who you are at 28, at 30, at 40, hopefully not at 58. I hope
Let's hope not.
Learned by then, but yeah. Time at work is so interesting, and I know we're kind of getting negative, but it's really
it's not. It's not negative. It's real.
Yeah, but I think there's also so much power and so much good in being around different people that were chosen for you by senior management. I think it's really cool to have the say-so of who you surround yourself with as a freelancer. Because like I said, I learn something new every single day. And it's never a dull moment. Ever.
That's real.
Never a dull moment.
Gotta love that. And I feel like we have a really good sense of your why, or at least I do. I'm curious to know, when you look at the word success, how do you define it?
Ooh, that's hard. I really struggle with this. So I think for me, I really lived a life of survive versus thrive up until I would say maybe like a year ago. Where I was finally breaking out of that like feast or famine mentality, right? But for me, that's because I wasn't educated about finances. I wasn't educated about self-sustaining, right? I've been on my own since I was 17. Literally. Wow. I have been on my own since I was 17. Put myself through undergrad. I've bought a couple cars on my own. Like when somebody hears that, they're like, well, that's success, right? But what they don't know is I always had $20 in my bank account. I had maxed out credit cards. Because I thought that I had to have this persona. That's how I was raised and how I was taught. So now I look at success as little things, right? So for instance, for those of you only listening, not watching the audio, I'm showing my journal. And I live and die by my journal, right? And I practice this practice called micro-ambition, where you only focus on 3 tasks a day. You only write down 3 things that you need to do, and you do them your absolute best that you possibly can. You know, so for daily, my success is getting that done and getting it done to my best of my ability and really delivering what I've promised. But also success for me at this point now moving forward is like spending an entire day cooking, right? Like every weekend I cook like no one's business. I don't buy processed food. I make my own breads, my own sauces. Yesterday I made 25 jars of chicken stock. I cooked down 2
Wow.
I spent the whole day just making stock. And so for me, that's success is when I don't have to answer an email. I can kind of go off grid. And I know that maybe that's like self-care, But for those of you who are starting your business, or maybe you've been in it for a little while and you're like on this hamster wheel where you might be working all hours of the day and night, or you're working the weekends and you're trying to break that mold. I recently did that as of like 2 months ago. And I forced myself to start having a free day on like, I work on Saturdays a couple hours here and there, but like if I have one whole 24-hour period where I don't have to talk to anybody, that is success to me, because that means that I'm finding balance as a CEO and as a leader to recharge, to do the things that I love. So yeah, that's success to me. I don't really care about like the salary I bring home, as long as my bills are paid and I can buy my dog like a monthly box of toys. Like I don't really care.
Right.
But yeah, I know that's like such a silly answer, but
it isn't.
I don't know. I think I'm really just trying to find balance now. And so any time that I can get that's success.
I appreciate that. And I like I said, I like your transparency, because so many people get caught up in the numbers, right? Or they get caught up in all of these major milestones. And not only you, but other guests that I've had on the podcast, they share the same thing. I very, very seldom do you hear people say, oh man, success was when, I made $10 million while I was sleeping in Maui,
like our man Biggie once said, more money, more problems.
More problems. That's facts. That is facts. Yo, it is. It is. And that's the one thing that most people who have yet to, quote unquote, attain the perception of success, because I think that's really all it is. It's like the Matrix. It's perceived success. But when you take that red pill and you see what it really looks like, then you're like, oh man, it's kind of ugly over here.
Seriously. And I think even when you make that money, and you make it faster than what you planned, your systems and your foundation aren't set up to handle that. So while you have short-term success, we think about like SoundCloud rappers, right? Or like rappers on TikTok who are blowing up. They're having these really quick, short-term successes. They're kind of like the new version of a one-hit wonder, right? And so it's like you blew up so fast, you made so much money so fast. Well, how do you sustain that? How do you continue that trajectory? And that's why I think I have a huge problem. I'm getting better at it, but I do the comparison game a lot, and I blame social media for that. But I also sit with myself and go, well, how long have they actually been in business? Because we're seeing their success, and it's probably been 6 or 7 years, and we're comparing them at the 2 to 3 year mark, right? And so I really try to sit and look at what I'm doing and see that long-term trajectory so it can be sustainable. And that's something I think that's really, really important that a lot of people overlook sometimes. And you got to figure out how you continue that long-term success.
I agree. Now, you mentioned earlier that you've been on your own pretty much since 17. And I'm curious, how have you been able to navigate? You are very wise, not just from an individual perspective, but from a business perspective, right? You talk about how important it is to be financially literate. And I'm curious, where did you pick up all of these skill sets, all of these things that you needed to be able to be where you are today? Because a lot of people don't have the ability to do it or go at it alone. Were there people that came along that helped you along your journey? What did that process look like from 17 to now?
Yeah, not to be a little negative Nancy again, but I really think I don't even know how to answer this, because in the sense that I never had someone that I could ask $20 for, like ever. I never had somebody that I could be like, oh my God, I can't afford a tank of gas. Like, can I borrow $20 from you? I never had that experience. I never had that support system. And so I think for me, being forced into like a survive versus thrive, feast versus famine space, you learn to do absolutely anything that you need to do and everything you can do in order to make your life the way that you need it, right? And so I'm sure people listening are going to be like, oh, everything was mapped out for her. I still have no fucking clue what I did. And it's like, yeah, it's nice to have money in the bank, but like I look back and it's like, I went to undergrad because that's what I thought I had to do. So I worked full time. I was working 50-hour weeks and taking 7 classes a semester.
Wow.
My entire undergrad. Like, when I tell y'all, like, I did absolutely every single thing that I could in order to sustain this, like, independence, right? So I think growing up in the environment, in the really abusive environment that I grew up in, not only domestic abuse, but sexual and emotional, is when I got out of that, and when I finally came out about my abuse, I never wanted to be in that situation again. I still can't even, like, when I go home to Ohio, I can't even walk in that house. Like, my stepmom and my siblings still live there. I can't even go inside, right? Because it mentally puts you in this space of where you were during that trauma. And so I did absolutely everything that I could, and I still do, right? Like, I talked about driving Uber. I am not some, like, too good to do anything, right? Like, I will drive Uber. I will go back and work in retail if I have to. Like, I will do whatever absolutely I need to do in order to make that happen. Now, I think from a learning perspective, I'm really fortunate that I've always been a reader and that I am a sponge. I love learning things. And so I've read a lot of books. I devour, not only listen, but, like, devour business podcasts, you know? I think part of that too is, and I say this with as much love as I can, but I think the female space within entrepreneurship is incredibly toxic. And I think that they put these boundaries and these barriers on things because you're a woman and you need to be, you know, you need to be pink. Like, I hate all of that. And so I was reading Gary Vaynerchuk. I've met Michael and Susan Dell many times working in the nonprofit space. I was reading his books. I was asking questions to people who are more successful. There were people on our board at our nonprofit that are still my mentors today that also own their businesses. And they're men. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's something that I think I broke through that I don't think a lot of people have the confidence to do or know how to do, especially as a woman in this space, is you want to listen to every woman and cut every man out. And I just think that's just bullshit, because there's a reason why companies in the corporate space are so successful. And when you're like, I never want to be near corporate, there's a reason their companies are successful, is because of the processes they have. And so I was devouring all of that, and I still do. And so I think that it's really interesting, like, to think about that question, because I don't know. I just never wanted to be where I was 10 years ago. You know, I never want to be there ever again. So, and if that means that I got to eat ramen for a couple of days, then
ramen it is, man. Because you chefing in the kitchen anyway. You know what I can do with ramen.
Exactly. And I think for me too, because I come from a space where I never had anything growing up. Like, I had Skechers. I was never allowed to have, like, nice shoes. I was never allowed to have any, like, brand things. I didn't have my first iPhone until I was, like, 24. I didn't have an iPod. I had an off-brand MP3 player. You know, so for me, I'm not a big spender either. You know, and so for me, like, I think that also is a huge benefit, is I don't have a high cost life. But yes, I live in Austin and it's really expensive to live here. But, like, I don't shop constantly. I don't do all those things. So it's really easy to be able to not have to have that pressure while you're learning and growing to sustain a life that you had before. I don't know.
And I want to go back to the concept of surviving and thriving. Do you feel like it's something that a person is, I guess, perpetually kind of switching between the two? Or do you feel like a person either goes from survival mode to thrive mode, and then it just kind of stays that way? What's your perception of survival and thriving?
I don't think it's that clear. I think that it's very easy to fall back into one or the other. And I think it's all about your intentionality, right? So when we talk about my life and kind of breaking that barrier. When I started my business, I was like, all I have to do is make what my salary was and I'll be fine. I only had a month of savings saved up when I quit my job, right? And so, but I also think it's, again, like being intentional about who you surround yourself with and how you're moving forward in order to sustain and move up, right?
Yeah.
But I also know that it's very easy to dip back into things. We look at percentages of reincarceration for just as like the most like extreme example, but it's so much easier to become reincarcerated than it is to never go back because of the situations that society presents. And so when we're really thinking about my life versus somebody else's, again, I think it's all about your intentionality. But I also think it's about the goals you set and the way that you move and who you ask help for. That's something that I struggle with just from my life is I don't ask anybody for help. I mean, I talked about the $20 thing. Like my boyfriend, Jesse, gets pissed at me sometimes because I do everything on my own because when you're in that survive mentality for however long, for me, it was 20 years, my entire childhood, my entire early adulthood. It's very hard to break those practices that are ingrained in you. And so working really hard to understand what those are. And I think I'm not like this huge, like everyone should go to therapy, but I think if you have a certain level of trauma or you come from a certain environment or even like, just like, I don't know, I think just anything that happens to you in your life, have somebody you can talk to and ask for help. It doesn't have to be therapy. It could be a friend, a family member, whatever. And I think that's really how you break those barriers.
Wow, that is so powerful.
I don't know.
Like, see, you keep dropping gems, and then you be like, "Well, I don't know." No, you are. What you're saying is
I just
so
know what
on
my
point.
experience is. I know what my experience is, and I think that, and that's I think sometimes why I really struggle with giving advice and with having kind of conversations like this is I don't know what works for the masses. I am not a normal case, right? We talked about this the other day where if y'all have ever gone through trauma, there's a like a test quiz thing called the ACE test. And every question or statement you say yes to, your number goes up out of 10. I'm a 9 out of 10 on the ACE score, which means I should be knocked up. I should be addicted to drugs. I should have heart disease at this point. Like, I should have cancer. I should be incarcerated. I should be a single parent. Like, there's all these things that have built up because of what I've been through. And I just know, like, and we talked about this the other day too, of like, I went to this therapist when I was 18. And you sit for your first time and they're like, what's wrong with you? Right? And you like go through the list and you're like, well, this and this and this and this and this. And this therapist, I will never forget, looked at me and goes, I'm surprised you're not pregnant or on drugs for everything you've been through. And so that's really been a foundational thing for my life and how kind of getting through that survive first thrive mentality is I never want that mentality to be right.
Right.
Now I'm 28. It's like, if I get knocked up, is it that big of a deal? Probably not. But, at the same time, it's like, I never want to prove people right that I fell into the what is the word I'm thinking of? Like when you're a statistic of something, you have these kind of like repercussions, right? That happen. And I never want to be that statistic. It makes me uncomfortable to say that I am one, but if I can prove those people wrong and show people that even if there's not a true method to my madness, like, and I can break through, other people can too. And that's I think why I struggle with advice too, because it's like my trauma isn't better than your trauma or worse than your trauma, but like here we are all swinging on the same swing. So,
That's definitely a way to put it.
We all have the same toys on the playground. Right. And I think that's the biggest thing for everyone, listening is I'm very open about what I've been through. I always have, because for me, I think it not only makes it real, right? Because I had a lot of people not believe my trauma and still don't believe my trauma. But not only does it make it real, but it makes it kind of that foundation of it's only up from here. you know?
Right. Right. All the upside. The upside is unlimited. It's unlimited.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, when we look specifically at the agency that you started,
Sure.
what led you to do that? Did you always know that, hey, you know, one day I'm going to start my own agency and be out there doing my own thing? Like, this is what I've always dreamed of doing.
No,
Like,
not at all.
How did you just start?
No, I think I mentioned it. I really wanted to be a museum curator at
Right.
the Smithsonian from the 5th grade. And this is really like where my story starts is in the 5th grade, I went to Detroit, got to go to the Henry Ford Museum.
My hometown.
Hey, I love Detroit.
Yes.
Cool city. But, you know, I got to sit on the bus that Rosa Parks protested in. I got to see the car that Kennedy was assassinated in. And there was this whole exhibit about civil rights. And that, I mean, that's been my foundation forever. Like, I knew at 12 years old, 11 years old, however old you are in 5th grade, that's all I ever wanted to do. And so for me, the undergrad I went to Texas State, go Bobcats. There was no help to get into that field. All the museums in Austin are on UT's campus. And so they only take interns from UT. So couldn't volunteer, couldn't get an internship, couldn't, you know, afford a school in DC to go to college there. Like, and so I started looking at other ways of how can I tell people's story because, and this is a little, you know, pessimistic of me, but at the time, I didn't think anyone was going to tell my story. And that's kind of like where I've been is like, well, if no one's going to share my story, let me share others. So other people are heard. And that's really kind of what kickstarted my new path, right? And then, so I was freelancing. I was a solopreneur, for whatever that phrase is, you know, up until this year. I hired my first employee back in April.
Okay.
And I started really looking at, and I also want to be very transparent with y'all. I did not file my LLC for my business until May of this year. So I gave myself 1 full year of doing this full time to decide if it was something that I wanted to do, that it could be sustainable. Because for me, as a multi-passionate millennial, I have all these interests. I didn't know if I was going to want to do this long term. And, you know, I think that it's like, do I still want to do this long term? Yeah, I could be a CEO, but I want to have other companies now. And so I gave myself a year. And this year in April, I hired a VA. That was my first hire. And I started to really look at what an org chart could look like. Like, who else could I hire onto my team? Because my dream is to like have a coffee brand. Y'all, if you know me at all, I'm obsessed with coffee. Oh my God. I really want to do other things. I want to be able to be on more boards and volunteer more and, you know, do all these things. And so I started looking at, well, how do I do that?
Right.
And so becoming an agency and moving into an agency model kind of just made sense because long term for me, I have this dream that we have about 15 employees. That's kind of what I would love to have. And we have a department per service. We have videographers. We've got, you know, audio people, photographers. We've got designers, right? Am I a good designer? I think I am. But I don't want to do it all the time. I want to be able to capture people's stories. I want to be able to bring their vision to life. I don't want to be sitting here exporting logo files until I'm 80 years old, you know? And so, you know, so within that, it made sense to move into the agency model. We're definitely not there yet. We're a team of 3 right now. Okay. It's going to be 4. And it's exciting. I mean, it's fun. But I think ultimately, too, it allows us to help more people. And that's really where I'm coming from is I can only handle so much. And if we expand the team, we can serve more people and we can help more people. So, yeah. So, I don't know, but we're an LLC. I don't know if we'll ever move into like an S Corp. You know, from a legal side, I couldn't tell you. But I do know that, like, I want an office and I want to make this a full, like, I say we're a full service agency and yes, we technically are, but it's Sarah doing everything, right? Like, but I want people to be able to come into our studio and work with us on their video projects and on their brand and meet in person and give them full experiences. Yes. Not just make it feel like it's an expense, you know? So that's what we're doing.
I love that. That's a beautiful vision. And I know that you're going to accomplish it. Yo, you have that fire, you have that drive, and you already know. Yo, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And I'm curious, in your business, what are some tools that you find help you to get the job done, make things easier for you to function?
Yeah. So if y'all know me, that I am all about the anarchy and I go against the grain. So I am a very proud Canva user. Okay. I'm going to say that very flat out, very loud and proud, because the whole design world's going to be like, well, you're not a real designer. No, I work smarter, not harder, right? If I can click a simple key on the keyboard to make a circle and I don't have to manually create it, of course I'm going to use it. Right. So I love Canva. I am a huge Canva advocate. I love what they're doing at that company. They've rolled out so many innovations this year. Like, they literally rolled out video editing last week.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. So Canva's the first. The second is Notion. Okay. So I use Notion for literally everything from goal setting to project management to team management, daily tasks. And I actually sell, if you're a designer listening, I sell an entire bundle called Notion for Designers. I'm the owner and creator of it. And it's a full setup. So Notion can be really overwhelming because it's not a box software, right? So when we think of Trello or we think of Asana, you have to fit your processes into how they've developed their software. Whereas Notion, it is a blank slate. So I made it really easy. So I sell that. It's $57 and it's like 45 templates or something. It's insane. And then additionally, Google, the little things. But then lastly, for big design, like custom work, right? Like obviously Canva's for like brand guidelines and templates. Right. But I actually love Affinity Designer. So it's Apple's basically replica of Illustrator, but it is not even a third of the price. It's a one-time buy in the App Store, and it is Illustrator to a T. I think it's like $50, whereas like Adobe, you pay monthly. You pay like $30 a month for Adobe. So I love Affinity. I do everything in it, and it's really cool because you can still export, you can export Illustrator files, Photoshop files, and be able to share them, but you're not paying for Adobe, which is really cool.
Right. Yeah. Wow. I appreciate you for sharing those tools because you never know. There are some designers there. I'm going to have the links below. Also link into your resource as well. So it'll make it a lot easier for them to just use that. Your templates. I mean, you did the heavy lifting so that all they got to do is come along, implement it, and be off to the races.
And I will say there's actually one new tool that I've really come to love, which is
what's that?
Which is called kitchen.co. So I've been beta testing it the last couple of months. They're a newer company, but it is for client communication. Oh, so it's really cool because you can actually take invoice payments through Kitchen, and you can lock your design files or whatever files until the invoice is paid. So you can actually upload them into like the project space, but clients can't access anything until they pay you for the final work. You can communicate. It all goes through like your Gmail account, but it's a full interface. So if you guys need like a communication tool, not to like plug my YouTube channel, but I did do a whole video about Kitchen.
Oh, nice.
I don't sometime recently.
Yeah. I'll make sure that link is in the description. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Kitchen is really cool and it's free, or you can pay, I think it's like $5 a month for like updated features. But I've really come to love it because my team can just go right into Kitchen and communicate with clients. They don't need to be in my Gmail account or anything. You can upload files. You can like literally do everything in there. It's really cool.
Yeah, that sounds so efficient. Streamlines that process of communicating with your clients. Yeah, I love that. Well, man, Sara, this has been such an amazing discussion. And before we wrap things up, there's a segment of the show that I like to close out with the guests. I'm trying to find a name for it, but so far I'm just calling it Pick 3. Essentially, what's going to happen is I'm going to allow you to pick 3 random numbers, and I'm going to give you a question. So it'll be 3 questions total. And all you have to do is pick a number between 1 and 16, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. 2.
Number 2. So here's the question. What was your first big treat yourself purchase to celebrate the success of your business?
Ooh. That's a hard one. I don't know. So when we say like the success of my business, like do we mean when I launched my business or like when I hit a certain point?
Totally up to you. Totally. What was a purchase that you made where you were like, this is something that I wanted, and because of my business, I was able to get this for myself?
Oh, okay. I guess then it would be my Mac Mini. So I kind of just like woke up one day and was like, I want a Mac Mini. And I bought it. It's funny because my business coach is like telling me to start living a little more of like a luxury life. That's something she's like challenging me to. So when I hit 100K, my boyfriend and I actually bought row 1 50-yard line tickets to see the Austin soccer team. So they're new to me. This like their first season, and we bought front row, like literally I could touch the wall.
Wow.
At the 50-yard line, and that was really fun. So that was something we did as like celebrate.
I like that.
Yeah,
that's dope. What's your second number?
Obviously, it wasn't like for my business, but yeah. No,
it didn't even have to be for your business because it's about treating yourself, and I love that because you chose an experience and you enjoyed it with somebody else, somebody that's close to you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
So, what's your second number between 1 and 16?
9.
So that question is: if you could partner with or have lunch with any business owner, influencer, or celebrity, who would it be?
Oh, God, that's so hard. Influencer or celebrity or business owner?
Yep, anybody.
It would definitely be Shea Serrano. So even though I've already met him a few times, so Shea Serrano, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to educate you real quick. But he is the first Latino to have more than one best-selling New York Times book.
Wow.
So he wrote the Rap Yearbook. He wrote Hip Hop and Other Things and Basketball and Other Things. I have all of them.
Nice.
So him and Arturo, and for those of you who are like watching the video of this, the Rocky poster that's right next to me is done by the artist who does all of Shea's books. His name's Arturo Torres. They're both from Texas, San Antonio and Dallas. And Shea, so just like a quick story. So when I was in college, I wrote my thesis over how rappers are actually historians and really cover inner city life, right?
That's dope.
And he had like one day on Twitter, Shea was like, send me all your writing, like just email it to me or tweet it. So I was like, it like is getting published at my undergrad, like I might as well just send it to him.
Right.
And so I sent it to him and he retweeted me. And it got me, like, Charlemagne the God saw it, and it got me a writing job, which was, like, insane. Like, Charlemagne the God literally tweeted me, like, And so when I went to, I think it was Basketball and Other Things. Yeah, because that's the second book. So when Basketball and Other Things came out a couple of years ago, I went to the book signing, and I was like, you probably, don't even know who I am, but, like, you retweeted me about this work. And he goes, Sarah, I know exactly who you are. And when you get to where I am, you need to do the same thing and reach back and pull somebody up. And so I've really carried that forward with me. And so I think it would be really dope to, like, just sit with him and hear, like, his writing process and learn more about how he went from being a teacher, because he taught, I think it was middle school. I think he taught middle school in San Antonio. To how do you find a topic and write a book and become a bestseller? And I think that would be really dope. Just like talk about basketball too, because I'm a huge basketball fan. So
that is so dope. Yo, I love that. And it's so cool that you already had the opportunity to connect with him, and just being given that opportunity to have some of that personal one-on-one, it would definitely take it to the next level.
And I will say, I've been asking Arturo for an Apollo Creed art for like 3 years. I'm like, I don't care how much, like, I want this. So, like, Rocky's my favorite movie of all time.
That is that photo is so dope.
It's when he defeated Drago, the Russian fighter in Rocky 1 or Rocky 2. And it's just so cool. And Apollo Creed is my favorite, like, non-main character of the Rocky series. And so I just think it'd be so dope to have an Apollo Creed. Like, everyone makes fun of me for it, but I'm like, you gotta do, like, this is why I love Rocky, not to, like, totally get off subject. But
no, sure.
But I think, like, the thing about Rocky, and I tell everybody, and this is why I keep it hung here, is, like, Rocky did absolutely everything he could to be the best at what he did. But he was still humble. He was still quiet. Like, he went and worked at a meat packing plant so he could fight in the ring and not have to do all this crazy work and make these moves. But he still, when it was time for him, he got the accolades and he got his roses. And that's, I think, what I try to aspire to is success might not come tomorrow, but you're always planting those seeds. You're always got to do what you got to do. And like Rocky says, fighters got to fight, right?
Right.
Designers got to design.
Yes.
Podcasters got to talk,
Yes.
So I think you just got to keep going. And that's literally why I keep this hung here, because when I'm feeling down or feeling like it's not, I'm working so hard, I'm not getting what I want. Rocky's here to remind me that sometimes you get knocked down, but you get back up and you keep getting into that ring every single day.
I love that. I love it. Last question. Any number between 1 and 16?
Ooh, 15.
15. Question is, if you could operate your business or your office in any location in the world, where would it be and why? So this kind of goes back to earlier where you were envisioning your office. Now you can choose any location on the planet.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know me and you haven't dived into my YouTube channel, I am the biggest Disney fan. Like, and when I say Disney, I mean like the parks. Like I love Walt Disney World. I've been there probably 17 times.
Wow.
I love Disney with all of my heart.
I wonder what's the record.
No, not at all. I have friends that work in the company, so I used to get free tickets like all the time. So I might play a ticket and go hang out at Disney for the weekend.
Yeah.
But I have always said that like one of my like fancy schmancy dream goals is to be able to at least bare minimum qualify to live in Legacy Oaks, which is like a very rich neighborhood on Disney property. There's like a golf course on it. And like the base salary is like $400K. Like you have to like be making bank. But like your whole house is like high end Disney, like hidden Mickeys in the walls, and it's not tacky. And so I would love to like be able to live on Disney property at least half of the year and go to Disney whenever I want, and like be able to check email while I'm riding like Expedition Everest, or or like hanging out with Sleeping Beauty or whatever, and checking emails. But I will also say, because my brand is so based on my hometown of Cleveland, I mean, if y'all have never listened to Bone Thugs, my business name is literally named after a song on their Eternal 99 album. And it's a true intersection in Cleveland, and Tremont. And so I think it would be really cool to like go back to my hometown and give back to the city in this kind of way, because entrepreneurship isn't really popular in Cleveland. Like, obviously there's small businesses like mom and pop stuff, but from like a freelancing female type of, there's no design agencies there. There's not really this forward momentum. So I think it'd be really dope to like have a loft downtown, like near the queue. So I could like go to work and then just cut over and go watch the Cavs real quick. Right. But yeah, wherever, I don't know.
That is so cool. I love that. I never would have guessed like the Disney one. So like, see, that's why I love that. I love these questions.
I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, you never know what you're gonna get. I love it, man. Sara, it has been such a joy speaking with you. Before we wrap things up, just want you to have the opportunity. Are there any questions that you like to ask me, or any last or closing words that you like to leave the listeners with?
I don't think so. Just thanks for reaching out to me. I mean, we literally like emailed like 2 weeks ago, and you're like, oh my God, your YouTube channel. I'm like, no one ever emails me. That's none of my stuff. Like, this is dope, And so I'm just really grateful that you gave me the opportunity to have this conversation.
Oh man,
and probably
I've enjoyed it.
To the end of this episode, and I wasn't annoying you. Like, thanks for listening. I say that at the end of every YouTube video. I'm like, well, if you made it to the end, I'm super appreciative.
Yo, I'm telling you, you are dropping so many gems. The things that you're sharing is so valuable. We talked offline last week, and I really could sense your heart and your character when it comes to adding value to people's lives. Like, you are so genuine. And I don't know anybody that will watch this or listen to it, however they're consuming this podcast at the moment, that won't be able to tell. Like, we know why you, Sarah, succeed. Like, it's like no doubt. And it all has to do with just you being genuinely yourself. And that's amazing. Don't change. But this is what I'll say based on what you mentioned and how I believe as well. Keep improving, but don't change at your core, because it's why you are who you are. It's why you've had the success that you've had with your business, your agency, and beyond.
Absolutely. And I tell everybody that too. As horrible or as easy as your life was, let it shape and mold you however it needs to, you know?
Right.
And we may look at that negatively sometimes when we're feeling down, but I wouldn't be who I am today had I not gone through what I went through, had I not experienced life the way that I did in those fundamental years. And so don't run from who you are. Don't try to be who you're not just because social media is telling you how to be one way. And that's, I think, something that we talk about being proud. That's the thing I'm most proud about is I don't give a shit about me. I don't care if you think I'm weird or if you think I'm or if you think like I'm intimidating. Like, I don't care, because once we get on a conversation, once we get on a call and chit chat, I'm just a normal human, you know? And so I'll leave y'all with this last thing. And I say this literally, I feel like I beg people sometimes, but like, you can literally reach out to me whenever you want. Like, if you have questions about our conversation today, or if you check out my YouTube channel or my business and you just want to like bend my ear, I'm not going to invoice you. You can ask me questions. You can DM me. Like, please, like, DM me. I always feel like I'm begging for like, I'm one of those people that education is free. And I give my best stuff away for free. I don't care who you are. So anything you guys need, I am here for you.
And that's what it's all about. Yo, we value relationships. And I would say anybody out there listening, especially if you're in the design space, if you do not take the opportunity to reach out to Sarah now while you can, you may live to regret it. I mean, I'm just saying, like, you are so genuine. And I can only, whoever becomes your mentee is going to be so blessed, because like you mentioned before, when you hop on calls, like, listen, I'm going to tell it to you like it is. You may not like what I'm going to say, but at the end of the day,
try at least once, but it's
right. You going to hit your goals though. We going to make it happen. And I love that.
Totally. Oh man, I love it.
Sarah, let them know how they can contact you, support you, and just show you some love.
Totally. So I'm sure we're going to put all this in the show notes. But my Instagram is at 99 St. Clair. That's my business. I don't really use like my personal Instagram, so just DM me on that. It's me. I don't have a social media manager. No one's managing my account. Like, you're literally talking to me. And then also my YouTube channel is just Sara Loretta. You can literally search it and I should come up pretty easily. Yeah. And then my website too is just 99stclair.com. So
I love it. Yo, you guys, Success Squad, make sure you go and show Sarah some love. She definitely deserves it. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If you're ever interested in coming back on, it will be an honor to have you come back.
Absolutely. Anytime. Let me know.
Thank you.
Hey guys, it's Sarah, the founder and CEO of 99 St. Clair. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. I am super honored that you've listened to my story and we've had this great conversation so far. I'm excited for what you're about to listen to. But in the meantime, if you want to connect with me, hop on over to Instagram. My handle is at 99 St. Clair. Also, that's my website too. Same spelling, everything that you need. Connect with me via DM, send me an email, and let's chat more about your business.